The grand interstellar liner, Celestial Bloom, hung in the velvet blackness near Jupiter, a glittering jewel of the Andromedan galactic hegemony. Inside its opulent observation deck, Princess Lyria of House Tveren gazed at the swirling gas giant, but her thoughts were far from majestic. She was a political prisoner in all but name, sent on a cultural tour to prevent her from supporting her brother's reformist faction on their homeworld. The hegemony, for all its advanced biotechnology and serene philosophy, was a stratified society, its rules and castes as rigid as ancient stone. Lyria felt the weight of her gilded lineage like chains. Her escorts, the severe Lady Vale and two silent, hulking guards of the Chitin Order, watched her constantly. The tour's final, quaint stop was a Terran cultural exchange outpost on Ganymede, a backwater in hegemony terms. Humans' recent entrance to the galactic stage were seen as clever but chaotic, brittle, and primitive, their technology a noisy, blunt instrument compared to the elegant bioengineering of the hegemony. The outpost was a shock. It wasn't sleek, organic architecture. It was a cacophony of metal, roaring atmosphere processors, and blazing lights. As her elegant shuttle docked, she saw human workers in heavy environmental suits laughing, gesturing wildly, and solving a leaking pipe issue with what seemed like violent hammering and creative welding. It was appalling. It was fascinating. The human liaison, a man named Captain Aristhorn, was another surprise. He stood straight in his simple navy blue uniform, but his greeting was a relaxed smile, not a formal bow. His eyes, a shade of earth brown she'd never seen, held a disconcerting directness. "Welcome to Ganymede, Your Highness. Hope the ride over wasn't too bumpy." The informal address made Lady Vale stiffen. Lyria, however, was intrigued. The tour was a series of bewildering contrasts. Humans explained their puny power cells with pride, boasting about cramming immense energy into small spaces. They showed her their primitive digital networks, which, Lyria realized with start, were not controlled by central AI, but were a wildly redundant, resilient chaos of nodes, impossible to silence or control from one point. Eris explained it with a shrug. Yeah, if one part goes down, the rest just routes around it. Nobody's in charge of the whole thing. It's a bit messy, but it's tough to kill. The concept was alien. In a hegemony, everything had a center, a controller. To have no center was either madness or genius. The event was a formal dinner in the outpost's mess hall, humorously decorated with paper streamers for the occasion. During a stilted conversation about hegemony poetry, a catastrophic decompression alarm shattered the air. A meteoroid shower had punctured a secondary habitat module. Panic was immediate but short-lived. Hegemony protocol dictated an orderly retreat to hardened shelters, waiting for automated systems. Lyria watched as Lady Vale moved to shield her, calling for their shuttle. But Aristhorn didn't follow protocol. He barked orders into a comm, and humans erupted into motion. It wasn't orderly. It was a storm of purpose. Engineers sprinted towards a breach, not away. Medics set up triage in the hallway. A young technician, her arm bleeding from flying debris, stayed at her console, rerouting life support with frantic, sure fingers. Eris didn't command from safety. He grabbed a repair kit, looked at Lyria, and said, "Stay with Sergeant Shun. She'll get you to safety." Then, he ran towards the screaming wind. Lyria did not go to safety. She watched, mesmerized through a viewport. She saw Eris and two others, tethered but exposed to the vicious cold, wrestling an emergency seal onto a ruptured conduit. His suit's heater failed. She saw the frost form on his visor. He didn't retreat. He shouted jokes over the radio, keeping his team focused until the seal clamped and the alarm ceased. In the sudden quiet, grimy, and breathing hard, the humans cheered, a short, explosive sound of triumph. They patted each other, checked on the injured, and immediately began joking about the incident. Eris returned, his face pale with cold, a burn on his cheek. He saw Lyria, still there. "Told you to get to safety, Your Highness. You ran into danger," she stated, her voice quiet. He wiped his face. People were in there. That's the job. That night, in her luxurious quarters on the Celestial Bloom, Lyria couldn't sleep. The hegemony valued harmony, order, and the collective, but it was a collective that demanded obedience and sacrifice for the system. The humans, in their chaotic, messy way, valued the individual within the collective. Their system existed to save the person. Eris Thorn, running towards death to save strangers, had more regal courage than any composed hegemony lord she knew. He was not a resource to be managed. He was a will, a force. And in her gilded cage, what was the one thing she lacked? A wild, utterly hegemony-defying idea began to form in her mind. It was not logical. It was perhaps human. Princess Lyria's proposal, delivered with formal solemnity the next morning in Captain Thorne's cluttered office, landed like a grenade. Eris, nursing a cup of viciously strong coffee, choked. Marriage, he echoed, disbelief washing over his features. Your Highness, with all respect, you've known me for 18 hours. And I'm a human starship engineer, not a galactic consort. It is a strategic proposition, Lyria clarified, her posture perfect, though her hearts were pounding. My marriage is a political tool of the hegemony. It will be used to cement an alliance with a conservative house, crushing my brother's reforms and leaving me a figurehead. A marriage to a human, a species outside hegemony politics, is a null move. It disrupts the board and makes me a target, Eris finished, setting his cup down. He studied her, the delicate silver filigree under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. He saw not a scheming princess, but a desperate one. Why not just ask for asylum? Political asylum would be an act of war by my family. A marriage is a personal, if scandalous, choice. The shame would make them disown me quietly. It is the cleaner break. She met his gaze. You're not like us, Captain. You act. You choose. You value the individual flame over the serene, cold light of the collective. I need to learn that. I am asking for your help. Eris was silent for a long time. He thought of hegemony lords looking down on his people, of the potential diplomatic firestorm, of becoming a pawn in a game he didn't understand. Then he thought of her watching him run into a breach, her eyes not judging, but seeing. He wasn't a prince. He was a problem solver. And this was the most insane problem he'd ever been handed. No promises, he said finally. But I'll escort you to Earth. We can talk to the diplomatic corps. Figure something out. It was not an acceptance, but it was a door. Lyria took it. The journey to Earth on Eris's ship, the KSV Dauntless, was a crash course in human chaos. The ship was clean but lived in, decorated with personal mementos, plant life, and a constant, low hum of activity. The crew treated Eris with respect, but no formality, arguing with him, laughing with him. Lyria tried to help in the galley and created a biohazard, the human food called pancakes. She was baffled by their concept of weekends and moved by their memorial wall for lost crewmates, not a sterile database, but a physical wall with pictures and handwritten notes. Meanwhile, Lady Vale was not idle. The Celestial Bloom shadowed the Dauntless. Using hegemony diplomatic channels, she began a campaign of pressure, characterizing Lyria as a vulnerable youth suffering from cultural shock, and Captain Thorne as a manipulative opportunist. Subtle threats were relayed. Trade deals with human colonies might be reconsidered. Hegemony support in the Galactic Council on matters of human expansion could be withdrawn. Eris received the first of these diplomatic missives. His brow furrowed. They're trying to box us in. Lyria felt a cold dread. Her gambit was putting his people at risk. The crisis escalated when the Dauntless was hailed by a hegemony interceptor, a sleek, predatory vessel. It was not Lady Vale's ship, but a military one. Princess Lyria, a commander's voice intoned. You are recalled by order of House Tverin. Your dalliance is concluded. Disengage from the human vessel and prepare for docking. On the bridge of the Dauntless, all eyes went to Eris. Protocol dictated compliance. A confrontation could be an act of war. Lyria's shoulders slumped. The cage door was closing. I must go. I cannot endanger you further. Eris didn't look at the view screen showing the interceptor. He looked at his crew, his navigator, his comms officer, his engineer. He saw their tense, waiting faces. He thought of pancakes on the wall and running into breaches. He keyed the comm. Hegemony vessel. This is Captain Thorne of the KSV Dauntless. The princess is here as a guest under the protection of the Solar Accord. She has expressed no desire to leave. You are in Earth-adjacent space. You will stand down. The silence on the bridge was absolute. The Hegemony commander responded, I see. You deny a sovereign house its heir. I deny a bully their target. Eris replied, his voice steady. Now, you can explain to your bosses why you started a fight in our backyard over a woman who doesn't want to go with you. Your call. For a long, tense minute, weapons systems on both vessels powered up, targeting lasers painting hulls. Then, with a final, terse warning, the Hegemony interceptor broke off, retreating into the dark. The crew let out a collective breath. Lyria stared at Eris, her eyes wide. He had just risked everything for her choice. He turned to her, a tired but fierce grin on his face. All right, princess, let's get you to Earth. We'll figure out the marriage thing later. First, we've got some diplomats to yell at. In that moment, Lyria didn't see a captain or a tool or a way out. She saw a man who drew a line in the stars and said no further. The theoretical idea solidified into a real, terrifying, exhilarating resolve. She didn't just need his help. She wanted to stand beside him. The silence after the storm was deafening. With the political crisis defused, the media frenzy died down, replaced by analysis of the Hegemony scandal. Sanctions on human colonies were lifted. Lyria's brother, Kalen, solidified his position, and the path for reform was open. Princess Lyria of House Tverin was officially an exile by choice, a celebrated one on Earth, a controversial one at home. On Luna Station, Eris Thorne received new orders. The Dauntless was to be reassigned to a deep space survey mission near the Orion Rim, a 5-year journey. It was the kind of mission he lived for. He stood in his quarters, looking at the packing crates, feeling a hollow ache he couldn't name. Lyria, meanwhile, was inundated with offers. Universities wanted her as a lecturer. The Earth government offered her a liaison role. Even some hegemony reformist factions, now emboldened, suggested she could return as a prominent voice. She had everything she wanted: freedom, purpose, respect. And it all felt empty, like a beautifully rendered hologram with no substance. They met for what they assumed was a goodbye dinner in the station's observation deck. Earth hung below them, magnificent and indifferent. You'll do great things out there, Lyria said, her voice carefully neutral, the formal princess mask back in place. Someone's got to map the void, Eris replied, trying for his usual casual tone, but missing the mark. You'll own every boardroom and lecture hall down there. An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with all the things unsaid during the chaos of survival. The easy camaraderie of facing a common enemy was gone, replaced by the terrifying vulnerability of peace. It was a good plan, Eris finally said, staring at his coffee. The marriage thing, crazy, but good. It worked. It served its purpose, Lyria agreed, the words tasting like ash. Another silence. Eris sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd come to know. Look, Lyria, the mission. It's a long one, but comms buoys get upgraded. Data packets can get through. Eventually. She looked at him then, truly looked. She saw the man who defied warships for a principle, who fixed broken pipes and broken politics with the same stubborn, caring hands. She saw the human who valued one life enough to risk all others. The idea that had begun as a political calculation had transformed. It wasn't about disruption or escape anymore. Your proposal, Eris said, the words tumbling out. Back on Ganymede. You said it was strategic. Was that all it was? Lyria rose from her seat and walked to the viewport, her reflection superimposed on the vastness of Earth. She thought of hegemony marriages, contracts of alliance, mergers of genetic lines, cold and efficient. She thought of human marriages she had researched, vows of partnership, promises of mutual support, messy, emotional, and defiantly personal. She turned to face him. It began as strategy, she confessed. You were a variable my people could not compute, a wrench in their perfect machine. But I was not calculating when I watched you run into a vacuum to save strangers. I was not strategic when you stood between me and my family's gunships. I was off. She took a step closer. You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act beside it. That order without freedom is just a prettier cage. You showed me what it means to be not a princess or a symbol, but a person. Eris stood, closing the distance between them. So what are you saying? I am saying, Lyria said, her voice gaining strength, that my proposal stands. But I am no longer proposing a political alliance. I am proposing a partnership, a shared journey, not as a princess and a captain, but as Lyria and Eris. The mission is 5 years? My people live for 3 centuries. 5 years is a beginning. A faint, real smile touched her lips. And I have been told human weddings involve a party. I believe I would like to experience one. Eris Thorn, captain of the KSV Dauntless, problem solver, stared at the alien princess who had turned his life upside down. He saw not a trophy or a ticket to nobility, but the bravest person he'd ever met, someone who had torn down her entire universe to build a new one, brick by brick. He saw his future, and it was terrifying and wonderful. He didn't get down on one knee. That wasn't their style. Instead, he reached out, took her hand, a human gesture she now understood, and laced his fingers with hers. Her skin was cool, her touch firm. A shared journey, he said, a true grin spreading across his face. Well, the Dauntless could use a cultural attaché. The pay is terrible, the coffee is worse, and we get shot occasionally. But the view, he said, glancing at the stars, then back at her, is absolutely magnificent. In the quiet of the observation deck, with a galaxy spinning silently outside, the runaway princess and the human captain sealed their agreement not with a treaty or a royal decree, but with a simple, lasting promise held in the warmth of their joined hands. The story of the princess who proposed marriage was just beginning, and its next chapter was written not in the cold ledgers of political strategy, but in the warm, unpredictable, and defiantly hopeful script of a shared human heart.